Everyone, and welcome to Learn, Live, Love. Today's interview is sponsored by Compass Asset Management. They are committed to helping individuals, couples, and families realize their financial goals, whether it's saving for retirement, providing investment income that will last a lifetime, or securing the future of your heirs. Compass can be trusted partner. Compass, among many things, has been voted 5-star wealth manager by the Hudson Valley magazine for 8 consecutive years. So check out Compass amg.com for more. The title of today's interview is Finances in the Marriage, Tips, Tricks, and Secrets. And Steve DeGregorio is going to reveal how to have constructive discussion about finances. My name is Dr. Marcus Abreu, and my partner here is Gene. So Gene, hey, say hi.
What's going on, everybody? Gene, the wedding coach. We help couples, engaged couples, plan a fun, entertaining, most importantly, stress-free wedding. Super excited to get into the second episode of the second season of Live, Love, Learn. And great to have my man Steve in here because, as you know, Marcus, finances do play a major role in marriages, and we just want to make sure that our couples have the most valuable content to really help them in their finances. There's nobody else better than Mr. Show Me the Money Steve right here, which is going to give us some tips.
So we're talking with Steve, the president and senior financial portfolio manager at Compass Asset Management. He's going to help us figure out how to help the couples. So welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us here in this interview. Let's jump right in. My first set of questions is going to be about your background and your experience as a fiduciary. So the couples in the audience can understand who you are, where you're coming from, and how you can relate to where they are right now, or you can help them relate to where they are. Then we'll jump into the cool stuff and the tips about finances in the marriage so our audience can get the real inside scoop. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of background, education, and experience on being a fiduciary and a financial advisor?
Sure enough. Thanks for having me, first of all, Marcus and Gene. Good to be with you all. And you're certainly covering a very important topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is helping couples in the relationship with regard to finances. A little bit about my background. Sure. I've been 33 years in this investment industry and financial planning, working with a lot of executives and people with wealth, but also working with couples and small business owners. And certainly when it comes to couples, the work that we do is really pivotal. We've handled both sides of things, helping young couples grow and accumulate wealth, and helping couples get through or get past the divorce situation. So, communication and finances is really important. I will tell you background in education. I have my degree in business and economics from a New York State SUNY school. I've been a certified financial planner now for more years than I can count. More licenses than I care to pay the fees on, but I'm really, when it comes to managing money for couples, I think that the most important thing is communication. And so we like at Compass to be able to educate our clients and help them become functionally proficient in being able to communicate well and manage their own finances, make better decisions. And that's how they are able to empower to be able to meet their own goals.
Okay. So one of the important things, and this is one of the issues with couples and communication seems to be a huge part in relationships. And although the research is actually suggesting that it's not the main part, that a lot of people are focusing on the wrong thing, but it's still, communication is a very important part. But there's two different types of problems in relationships. There's these solvable problems, and then there's perpetual problems. And these perpetual problems are things that continue to persist throughout the relationship. And it seems like financial problems can be some of those. Main point is that in the popular media, a lot of times we hear that financial problems are a huge situation in relationships. It's one of the biggest problems that relationships have. Although in 2009, there was a survey that actually suggested that it does have a a bearing on relationships, but it's not the biggest issue. The survey was actually done in family relationships for richer and poor. And it says, in the survey, it says, contrary to the findings from previous laboratory-based surveys, spouses did not rate money as the most frequent source of marital conflict in the home. However, compared to non-money issues, marital conflict about money were more pervasive, problematic, and recurrent, and remain unresolved despite including more attempts at problem solving. And so they become perpetual problems. These issues are part of that 69% of problems that couples kind of will never resolve. So how are you able to help couples kind of navigate that and not make it into a perpetual problem? Where do you see some of the main issues that couples come in with, where it does have that more of that perpetual issue? Because it's usually about values.
So that's a great question, Marcus. And I like to perceive it from this way. You know, whenever you come into a new relationship, you bring the baggage from the old relationships with you, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
And so what I'm going to suggest is that a person's relationship with money, be it good or bad, is what they're bringing into their new relationship. And so if they have bad money habits, bad decision processes, bad relationship with money, that's going to become a key component in what causes friction in their next relationship, their love relationship, the one that they want to make successful. And so they got to start out with understanding money, understanding the relationship with money, and having a healthy relationship with money. Understanding money is a tool. Money is whether it's debt or cash flow or accumulation of wealth. That all these things are passing, and money can be used very successfully to accomplish goals. But if you use it improperly, it can be devastating in terms of your relationships. So having a good understanding and good command of using money properly and having the right perception is, I think, a good start.
So what are some of the perceptions that couples might have that will hinder them in their relationships? I know savers and people that are spenders have a big issue. Is there other things like that you see?
Yeah. I mean, obviously savers and spenders, right? Like you said, the most successful, the millionaire next door is really the saver. It's the person that knows how to control their budget. They actually have a budget. Many people don't have a budget. And that being said, I'm not an advocate of everyone having a budget. I mean, but I am an advocate of being really familiar with what your expenses and cash flow are. Mm-hmm. And you need to have you don't need to know to the dime, but you need to have your arms around it. And so savers are really good at that. They pay themselves first, if you would. They're generally very disciplined people when it comes to managing money. They have good relationships around money. Unfortunately, they're also not big fans of risk, so they're not really inclined to invest. They're more the savers, right? They're very objectionable to borrowing as well. And on the flip side, people that are spenders, well, they're always looking for the next dollar because they've spent the last one, right, to the last penny. And they're always looking. They're the ones that are maybe chasing infomercials or buying the latest thing on sale, but I got a sale, and just because it's on sale doesn't mean it's a good buy, right? Doesn't mean it has to be bought just because it's on sale. So, and you can certainly see where the two, opposite ends of the spectrum have a tremendous gap in between. But I think I would say that one of the other key factors that we see most frequently is when people tend to borrow and create a lot of leverage. And that's really caused on the spending side, right? People think that they can manage their cash flows through credit, or that they can manage the credit by rolling balances from one credit card to another credit card. Or I've actually had a client that very intelligent individual, pretty successful in his own right, literally lived in debt, like everything. He paid all his expenses, accumulating debt all month long. really for literally a quarter at a time, you borrow money on a home equity loan and just accumulate this massive amount of debt. And then periodically do this large payoff with earnings from investments. But you can see how tenuous that would be. The uncertainty and the weakness of that kind of a strategy could really backfire and hurt somebody very badly. And unfortunately, it wasn't. I know that at least one time he had to go bankrupt. So, and those are the stories we hear about, right? The people that have had the difficult times. So I think keeping that in perspective, right? Having that balance between, do I borrow? Remember, a borrower is a slave to the person that he owes the money to, right? So you got to be careful about what you borrow, what rate you borrow. Do you really need to borrow? Do you need to borrow to buy that thing? Do you really need that thing? And having a good balanced view, that's important.
So Marcus, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
So Steve, you dropped a couple of jewels already. Relationships with money, bad money habits, understanding money. Money is a tool, savers versus spenders, creating a budget, expenses versus cash flow. But can you elaborate a little bit more when you say relationship with money? What exactly do you mean?
So a person's relationship with money, do they understand what money is? The fact that it is a tool, right? Some people, the saver, for example, the saver wants to put money aside because they're afraid of the next day. They're afraid one day they won't have enough. That maybe they want the independence of having something that they can always rely on, right? So the saver is not viewing money as the tool that money can really be, which is a means to accomplish something. Money helps you make progress and not just acquire things, but create a financially stable environment for yourself. And it doesn't have to be all my money's in the savings account or all my money's in an investment account. The ability to manage money properly is what creates that stability. So the relationship with money, what I mean by that is understanding that money is a tool, that it can be here today and gone tomorrow. Use it for its purpose that it's intended for. Do not lose sleep or anxietize over, do I owe money right now? And oh my gosh, I can't owe any money. Some things you're going to owe money on for a long time. Student debt, mortgages, car payments. If these things are things that most people can't afford to just go out and write a big check for. And so consequently, you have to have a balanced view of managing money properly. That means you have to prioritize too, right? To have a balanced view, you have to get your priorities in place where you make sure that your basic necessities are met and that you are not spending overtly. And I think one of the things that we see probably most common is that people have no idea how much money they spend on entertainment. I mean, literally no idea. Whether it's going out to dinners or buying wines or guilty, by the way, or shoes, right? Or whatever it is, shopping sprees or travel. They can't put a finger on how much they spend on entertainment. And if that to me is indicative of they like to have a good time and they're worried about paying for it later. And that's what's going to get you in a tough bind. So again, getting back to when you say relationship with money, it's about understanding how to use it well, use it effectively, and not anxietize over things that are just a necessity. Like I said before, student debt. If you have student debt, well, develop a plan and strategy, and then you don't have to anxietize.
So so a couple comes to you, right? What's the first thing that you do with them when you sit down with them?
Well, we want to get to know them personally first before we give them advice. We want to understand what their perspective on matters is. So you may have a saver and a spender in a relationship, and obviously that's going to create conflict out of the gate. How often do they talk about money? Do they share similar values with regard to money? Do they have the same objectives with regard to money? Do they think about spending money similarly? And if they don't, can they come closer on that space? Because doing that, getting the two persons closer to what they make decisions on will put them more in line with being successful in what they're trying to accomplish and create less friction. Part of the way that we do that is once we get to know them and their perceptions about money. And when I say perceptions about money, these are things we learn from earlier in youth. We may have observed it from our parents, from our family members, from our friends, people we hung around, right? So that's where we get our perceptions about money and how to use it or how to abuse it. And so we understand where the couples are in that way. Then we develop a strategy that'll help them to become more secure in how they're handling their finances. So that may employ paying down debt, may employ getting a better perspective on things. You know, we have some people that are all about paying down debt, right? So they want to get rid of the car loan as quickly as possible. Well, when you buy a car loan, and you're kind of buying a car loan, right? When you buy a car, you're paying interest. And no matter if you pay that car loan up front or not, or faster, pay it off quicker or not, you're still paying the same amount of interest. It's not like a mortgage. A mortgage where you pay down on it, you're saving yourself interest. A car loan, you're not. And the problem with a car loan is it's a depreciating asset. Your vehicle is, meaning it's worth less the longer the years go by. So when you borrow initially, that's a big decision. You got to realize you're buying a depreciating asset. You're going into debt to do that. That's just not a good thing, no matter what you do. So it is a necessary evil in a sense, because most people don't have the kind of money it takes to buy a car, tens of thousands of dollars to just pay for it outright. But once you've engaged in that loan, does it pay to pay it down? Is it beneficial to pay it down any sooner? No, you're not saving yourself any interest. So just create the cash flow scenario and get used to it. Just adapt to it, and just that's part of your monthly cash flow now. It just is what it is. Mortgage, on the other hand, mortgage does make sense to pay down. So, you know, if you can do that, or revolving cards or things like that, you can save yourselves tremendous amounts of interest by doing that. So, you know, there's different strategies that you can utilize. Paying off your credit cards. People think that rolling money from one credit card to another and being in a zero interest rate environment for a period of time is a way to go. Sure, if you're disciplined and you can get it all paid off before that time limit expires. Because if you can't, many times you're hit with retroactive interest, which is literally hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars, depending on your balances. And they don't think about that. So
you're gambling with the credit card company. You're kind of gambling with them that they're going to win, or you're going to win and you're going to pay it off. And they're gambling that you're not, and you're going to end up paying them more.
Hey,
so.
I love those things you get in the mail from Home Depot and Lowe's, and and there's many of others. I don't mean to name any companies per se, but you get these credit card offers and they go, oh yeah, spend the money with us, 0% interest for 6 months. And you go, you know what? We really do need that new refrigerator and that washer and dryer. You look at the fine print and you don't pay that off in 6 months, they retroactively charge you all the interest that you have been accumulating from day one.
Yeah.
Did you save anything? No, you just got hammered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve, getting that letter in the mail from like a Home Depot and saying to yourself, you probably wasn't thinking about doing repairs, but because you've got that, I would say, invitation, right? How does emotion play when it comes to your relationship with money? And how do you control that emotion?
That's a great question. I'll start out by saying that's not just a great question, but a great observation. Money is emotional. We tell that to our clients all the time. When people make decisions around money, it is an emotional decision. And like I said before, we refer to it as a relationship. That's part of the reason why, because it's people get very angst over money. Your investment, for example, if you're investing in the markets and you see the markets go down, do you feel anxiety? It's because of your relationship with money. If you're afraid, if you're fearful, if you're feeling that anxiety, you've learned that in some way. You're probably closer to a saver than an investor because you're afraid to lose anything. You're afraid to put anything at risk. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just who you are. But you ask an interesting question. How do you manage it? Well, you manage emotion around money by managing money properly, by understanding some basic principles with regard to money. Like, for example, we've just been talking a lot about debt and how to manage debt and cash flow, right? The same thing applies to investments, though. Investments are something where you're going to get market fluctuation. You don't control the outcome, but you know some fundamental facts that money invested in good quality companies over time will yield results. They may not be in the time frame that you want. They may not be as systematic or dependable of a return as you'd like. And then there's going to be some times where they make enormous amounts of return, and you think you're a genius for your investment. Never overestimate your own genius, so to speak. It was probably more luck than anything else that you got that investment, or the breadth of the market. When it comes to the volatility of a market, if markets go down in price or your investment goes down in value, managing the emotion around not making the decision to sell out because of fear is really what you need to work on. So, and in that regard, that's why we really want to get to know people about how they feel about money, because if we can manage money in a way and give them advice in a way that will help them not to take inordinate risk or risk that they are not comfortable with, they may not even be familiar with what they're comfortable with, but we get to know them and get to understand where their pain levels are, their tolerance levels are, and help coach them through those times. They can learn better habits about managing money, whether it comes to investment risk or it comes to debt risk.
So looking at a couple, when they come in, if a couple was to come into you and they have certain issues, let's say it's a saver or spender, or somebody that has these unrealistic ideas about that they're going to do a network marketing business and going to make millions and all that stuff. I'm not knocking the whole thing, because there's people that do it, but you have this, and they have these unrealistic ideas about what their future is going to be with what their present is. How do you work with that couple to try to help maybe the one that's content with what's going on right now and the other one that's not content? How do you help them kind of jive and get on the same page?
Wow. Yeah, that is about relationship there. That is, I guess I would say that, when you're asking that question, I was thinking of people that you use network marketing as an example, but a more popular example today might be the person that believes in, Bitcoin is going to go to 100,000, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say just the spouse. I'm not going to give it a gender identity, but the spouse is saying, there's too much risk in that. There's risk in everything. The question is, are you comfortable with the level of risk that you're accepting? So it starts with define and understand what the risk is. In a savings account, the risk is inflation, right? The erosion of the value of your dollar. If you're only making 0.1% in your savings account, but inflation is 7%, guess what? The value of your dollar is eroding at nearly 7% a year, which means that in 10 years, it's going to cost you twice as much to live, and you're going to have half as much money to do it in. So there's risk in everything. It's just understanding what the risk is and either getting comfortable with it, or only risking as much as you're willing to not have an attachment to or to lose, right? So when it comes to investments like Bitcoin, I used as an example, that's speculation. It's not a defined asset class as far as the SEC is concerned yet, although they're looking at it and making inroads in that. Might it be the future? Sure. Listen, we can all drink the Kool-Aid and have great optimism about things going forward, But the reality today is that it's a speculative investment. So would you put your whole 401k in a speculative investment? Probably not. If you look at the track record of something like a cryptocurrency and you realize that you could lose 70% of your money in 30 days, would that be the kind of investment you'd feel comfortable with? Probably not. Most people wouldn't. So that's what it takes. It's understanding yourself personally. When I talk about relationship with money, that's what it really is. Understanding how you feel about money.
That's a great point, Steve. What advice, or not advice, but what would you tell an engaged couple as far as checklists that they need to have in place with their finances before they get married?
So it has become more popular in recent years for couples to do a little background research on one another. I would advocate that.
Ouch.
I would advocate that. I think
you'll start some problems, Steve.
Well, you know,
going down the rabbit hole.
No one says you have to do it in secret. You can do it in transparency. You can say to each other, listen, you know what, we've got this beautiful relationship we're working on together, and we want to build something together, and we want to do it together. So I need to understand a little bit more about your background. And I'll share this personal story with you. I had a relationship once upon a time with someone that became a financial relationship because we were in a long-term relationship. And I came to realize that the auto loan that she told me she had was not an auto loan. It was a debt consolidation loan with the car as the guarantee. It was then co-signed by her father. I was told it was an auto loan, so I was helping her pay her auto loan. No, if I had known that it was a debt consolidation loan and that dad had to bail her out of debt because of her bad spending habits, maybe I would have made a better decision on that long-term relationship. So transparency in relationships is really important, and especially when it comes to money.
Yeah. So Marcus, can you piggyback on that? I think this is the Marcus question, right? Now, how would a spouse, right, before marriage or even after marriage, I guess it wouldn't matter. Would it matter after? But how would you approach this person that you want to take the next level with, and tell them essentially, I want to do a financial background check on you? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I don't know how people would feel about it. I don't see it a lot personally, but I deal with married couples, so I don't deal with engaged couples. So it's a pre-marriage kind of thing. So I deal with a lot of married couples. Some of them wish they would have had some financial checks behind what they did. But in essence, it's a matter of trust. Maybe you can present it as a way of building trust into the relationship, because we all know trust, respect, affection, and understanding are the cornerstones to a relationship. So it's built under this area of trust, of having that. Okay, so I want to, and people are getting married later on in life now. The average marrying age in New York is 30 years old in general. So there is some more financial background that's there, or some more financial baggage that's there that you might want to know about before you get into it. And it shouldn't be a matter of just having a background check. It should be a matter of disclosure as well. Hey, look, this is not a car loan. It's a debt consolidation loan. It's kind of like they're hiding it, and they shouldn't, or they don't understand it themselves, and that's why they're in trouble. So it's a matter of kind of being more open and allowing that openness to build that trust. So
if I can offer, I'm going to suggest that as much as, and I think Marcus, you can appreciate this, as much as you might want to have a conversation with your future long-term relationship or your future partner, spouse, what have you, as to how do you feel about children, or relationship, large families or holidays or whatever it is. How do you feel about money? It's a question that you need to have answered. And I think it'll open up a conversation that it's okay to have and it's safe to have if you're having that conversation transparently.
Yeah. So Steve, what's your professional opinion when it comes to prenups, and when should a couple consider prenup? I just had to throw it out there because
man, and you were talking about rabbit holes before. Okay. There's nothing wrong with a prenuptial agreement. A prenuptial agreement is just simply an agreement before partners get married, before they make a commitment to share expenses, to share assets together, that they've made certain decisions in advance. It doesn't mean that they don't trust each other. It may mean that there are some valid things that they need to protect or be concerned about. They may have children from a prior marriage. They may have their reasons. They may have been burned financially, and so they do have a lack of trust. But by sharing that communicatively with their future partner, whether they actually do a prenuptial agreement or not, the important thing is that they have the discussion.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on that?
So one of the things that we would do is we would have them discover what the background of the issue is. Why do they want to have a prenup? What is the idea behind it? What are the values that they're holding? What are the fears that there might be there in essence? And help each other understand and be kind of more attuned to each other, to know that gives that person some certainty that wants a prenup. And you might be able to concede to that certainty for them, even if you don't feel like they're trusting you. So it's that finding common ground. And in a lot of, like we were saying before, in a lot of financial issues, they can become permanent issues or perpetual issues in a relationship, because they are tied into so many things, so many fears, so many values that we have, so many things that we learned from our childhood that money represents for us, that relationship that we have with the money. So it's really discovering, because a lot of times if people want to do prenuptials for whatever reason it is, whether they have a business that they want to protect or whatever it is, right? Whatever in that situation, they both have to come to common ground if they want to process it throughout the relationship. Because if they don't, if one of them is, they're going to hold on to that within the relationship, and it's going to cause a wedge within the relationship. They have to come down to common ground. And I think that's where Steve would come in, because he would explain the details, the pros and cons of all that, of all those things coming in.
So Steve, what is your professional opinion on having joint account, separate account, or both?
Yes.
I agree, Steve.
Yeah, I don't think you should give up your identity by having nothing but joint accounts. I think having an individual account is a positive thing. It allows you that measure of independence. Now, that doesn't set the stage for I need a backdoor in my relationship. That's not what it is. It is your means of maintaining a certain level of independence in handling money in a frame, in your frame, whatever that is agreed to. And different people have had different perspectives over time. I see more commonly today young couples. I'm going to say young couples. I was going to say Gen X, Gen Y, right? Gen X, the younger end of Gen X, really. I was surprised a number of years ago at how independent they maintain their finances. And it harkened back to me for, a long time ago. And I was, we kept my first relationship kept our finances very independent. But we brought them in pretty quickly. And it was just, you go back, my parents, their parents, they didn't have the independence of that. Everything was jointly held. That has complications sometimes. Credit is not necessarily established for the surviving spouse. Women tend to live longer than men, so you would have women that have no idea about how to handle money because the husband made all the decisions in the relationship. She doesn't even have her own savings account, and that's a problem. So I think I'm an advocate of having having an account under your own name, each party, but having shared assets together as well.
And Marcus, what are your thoughts on that, on the joint account? And what experience have you had with your couples that have joint accounts, if you've had any?
Yeah, no, we usually don't talk about accounts in that way. Every once in a while, the wife will come up and sometimes they'll say, hey, well, what about the joint account? Should we have a joint account and all those things? It seems to be from her point of view. And many times it's because she might be a stay-at-home mom. So you see that, in although less in today's society, because we have a lot more women working, and actually of those families that are co-working, I think it's 23% of them, the wife is the main breadwinner, which can cause issues financially with the couple, because maybe the husband doesn't feel as potent because he's not the breadwinner in the family. So there's a lot of psychological things as to who's the provider, who's not the provider in those situations. But overall, I don't see it. It's a matter of preference. I do agree with Steve in the sense that, yeah, when you do have a surviving spouse and the other one doesn't know anything about the finances, which is in essence and Steve knows this, what's going on within I'll give you a personal situation within us, because my wife takes care of a lot of the finances. So, and from time to time, I thought, wow, if something happens, because we all think that we're going to live forever with our spouse and we're going to be happy and nothing's going to happen, but somebody usually outlasts the other. It's the way that things happen. So, how are you going to manage that? And as we get older, our minds are just harder to shift, to learn those things. So it's something that's good to learn now and to keep now and to have now. So as a matter of just keeping yourself a little bit more in touch with the way to survive in our society financially, I think, yeah, you should keep a separate bank account so that the dynamics of how to handle that.
So yeah, Marcus, yeah. I'm gonna let you jump back in. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Marcus, you touched on a great point, and that is, you mentioned, strengths and weaknesses in a sense, or maybe not weaknesses, but strengths. You recognize that, your wife handles finances, perhaps that's not something that you enjoy doing. And so she's doing that, and that's maybe her forte. I've noticed that in every relationship. I've been generally, because of probably what I do for a living, right? I've been the guy that's more confident and more competent in that space. It doesn't mean that I'm not willing to give it up. You just have to come to that relationship understanding. If this is your strength, or if this is your weakness, if this is your like, if this is your dislike, and make decisions accordingly.
Yeah. And it's also obviously people fall into their roles within the relationship at one point or another. And exactly. So what roles do you play? So
last question about this joint account, because I think it's super important, right? In this joint account, Steve, are you recommending that the couple have this joint account strictly for joint expenses and investments?
No, not strictly. That's something to consider, because I mentioned before about younger generation today. They tend to keep a lot of their money separate, right? They have their own individual accounts, their own credit card accounts, and sometimes they'll share a little bit around the edges, but not, what they share together is they might share who pays for dinner, or how they pay for dinner if they go out together. But sometimes they literally divide the expenses down the middle in the household. So I'm not an advocate necessarily of being that, what's the term I'm looking for? Militaristic in a sense of how you manage things. I think it really needs to be a level of comfort, because think about this: relationship with money, it's still about a relationship, and it's about trust. So you're trusting the other person is being honest with you about money and about how they're handling their money, and be honest with them too. So I think the more you find comfort in sharing things, the more things you share, the more you learn to trust one another.
So just to be specific, I get a paycheck, my wife gets a paycheck, we take a percentage of our paycheck and we put it into this joint account, and this joint account is designed to take care of family expenses, so forth and so on. Right? Is that
Maybe, if that's
the
what you've
concept,
agreed upon.
or is this
If that's what you've agreed upon,
go
then
ahead, Steve.
it makes all the sense in the world. Maybe you've agreed to put all of your money but X into this joint account together, and this X goes into your individual accounts because you like to, I don't know, you like to go to the gym and take your friends out to lunch afterwards and what have you, and maybe you need a little spending cash that you don't want to have to ask permission for every time you make that decision, right? Or maybe your wife would love to have the ability to buy a beautiful pair of shoes without that's $500 without saying, Gene, do we have the money to do this together? So if you have those independent accounts, you have that autonomy to be able to make those decisions. But then you have this joint account together. Does it have to be just for expenses? Could it be for wealth accumulation too? Couldn't it be for making bigger decisions together? It's just a matter of communicating and figuring out at what point, where are you comfortable? Yeah. Listen, for my own I'll be perfectly frank. When we have our largest accounts in the bank, I let my wife keep track of. I don't worry about that. Of course, I keep track of the much larger accounts because I'm the investment manager. So for our real money, our future money, I'm managing. That's different. But we have considerable amount of cash in the bank that I don't even worry about what the balance is from day to day because she's a great saver. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm the investor. I'm the guy that manages to get the assets, right? I look at, what leverage can I make with that dollar today and tomorrow? And I look at what our expenses are. So I handle all our monthly expenses and I handle what our tomorrow dollars are going to be through our investment strategies.
That's a great power team. I mean, you have an investor and a saver.
So Steve, let me ask you, if you want to go buy something, obviously, depending on what it is, like if you're going to make a big purchase, like you're going to buy a motorcycle or a boat, obviously you would speak to your wife about that first, right? But what sort of things are you buying? And I don't mean to get you in trouble, okay? I don't want no problems. But what kind of things would you spend money on where you wouldn't feel as if you needed to discuss with your wife? This for the fellas specifically, right? Because
Well, so well, listen, that's going to vary from relationship to relationship, right? I know there in some relationships, the guy manages the money, or the guy makes a lot of the big decisions, and it doesn't matter. He'll go out and spend money on a boat or a motorcycle or a car, and come home and tell his wife after. If she's okay with that, then that's fine for their relationship. In my relationship with my wife, that wouldn't float, no pun intended. And so would I spend money on a boat or a car or a motorcycle without her knowing? Absolutely not. But would I buy, and again, it's the relationship. Would I spend money on very nice things that I enjoy? Like, for example, full disclosure, I love wine, right? I love wine. And I love good wine. So I love a lot of European wines, older wines. And these things are not inexpensive. But this is something that I really enjoy. There are things that she really enjoys. So we're comfortable in our space. If I spend X amount of dollars on these things, or she spends X amount of dollars on those things, because we've had that communication together. We know and understand, and we know that we will keep it within limits. We're not going overboard, either one of us. So it really is just about communication. I'm sorry to come back to communication again, because it is an important factor when it comes to money, though.
It is. No, people should communicate on these issues. When I say communication is not the main issue, it's just that what people see on the surface of their relationship is that they're fighting. And so they think that if they're able to solve these problems, that then everything will be okay. And what happens is that for most people, they're chronic issues. They're not just little fights. Yes, if you can solve your little fights, that's great. But when you have chronic issues, those are more based on what's going on underneath the relationship. What's the friendship like? What is that like? And so when you get to that level, that's totally different. But that's the point of this, because we are talking about things that can be solved, that we can look at our finances instead of looking at our finances from that point of view that they are going to be perpetual, that they are going to be a problem that's persistent in the relationship, as they're seeing in the research, as the research is suggesting, that then, okay, so if we fix our friendship, yeah, then we got to figure out this financial thing. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a date where we talk about it. Let's have a couple questions that we get on the same page with. And so Steve, so if somebody, for example, wanted to get on the same page and wanted to what would you suggest as some of the questions that they should ask each other kind of to get things started? Like, especially an engaged couple.
Great question.
I was going to ask you to be specific. Are we talking pre-marriage or post-marriage?
Pre-marriage.
So as the couple's getting together, you want to remember what I said before about know your partner's relationship with money. When I guess probably the easiest way to approach a sensitive topic like money is to be willing to be forthcoming with your own personal experiences first. Say, you know what, let's have this conversation. I like how you framed it. Let's have a date night that we talk, maybe these are one of the things that we talk about. And, how do you feel about credit, or what's your credit score? How do you feel? Do you pay attention to your credit score? Do you know of anybody that's ever, been declined a loan because of a credit score? And then that kind of draws one another out and learn how you feel about that component. Well, the credit score component and how a person feels about it is a little telling about how they feel about handling money, right? If they're not that worried about it, I'm a little concerned about how they handle their money. If they're paying attention to their credit, if they're obsessive about their credit score, they're probably more of a saver. There are certain certain correlations between how they feel and perceive things that are telling about other aspects of their personality. But I think if you share a little bit about that first and start to talk about that, that'll open the
part of it is also asking things like, how did your parents deal with finances?
Exactly.
What were their relationships with finances? How do you feel about that? So those are questions that you start asking, because that's where your background of your finances comes from. What is it? What was your relationship with it when your parents, did you have a saver in your family? Did you have somebody that invested in your family? How were all those things are questions that you end up asking in those dates. There's a great book called 8 Dates that Gottman promotes. His name is on it, but it's written by somebody he promotes, but it's called 8 Dates. And one of the conversations is about finances. So it's a great way of talking about commitment, talking about trust, talking about children, talking about, how do you discipline your children, all those things. And it's a great way of starting those conversations. So Steve, do you think that it's easier or harder for new couples starting out today with finances as far as marriage that it was for us when we got started, I guess?
I think it's probably, I'm going to say, I think it might be harder for couples today in some ways. We came from a more structured background. Our parents were closer to the savers generations, and today, I think the generations have a tendency to take more things for granted. Like things are just going to go well. And if you don't have a plan and a strategy, things will not just go well. Hope is not a strategy. And so I think that the challenge for them is in their perception of matters and understanding that, they need to take more control of things and have a good balanced view. So
So where are the big opportunities for those couples where are the big opportunities right now as far as taking charge of their finances? Not as far as stocks or anything like that. That's not what I'm asking. That's not as far as them being able to, where's the big opportunity for them to start taking charge of their finances?
You know, I think it really starts with understanding what they spend and how they spend it and how meaningful that is to them, how important that is to them. If somebody has a shopping habit, that clearly is an expression of something else, right? If they're got to be out there buying things because it makes them feel good, well, that's tied to another aspect of their relationship or how they feel about themselves personally. And so I think where I think they have to start is they have to know what they're spending. That's the very beginning, the crux of everything. What are you spending? What are you spending it on, and why? I think if you start there, that'd be a great place.
Thank you, Steve, thank you, Steve, for a great interview. I'm sure couples in the audience have gotten tons of information today and tons of tips and tricks from you. This was good info. So thank you very much for sharing us. It's been great. Can you tell us a bit more about how couples can get help from Compass? Specifically, how can couples get help in discussing their finances with you or anything like that?
Sure enough. As we said in the very beginning, we're glad to help anybody that wants to take a look at their cash flows and expenses and plan for the future. We have certified financial planners on staff that will create a comprehensive financial plan for you. All the individuals have to do is take a look at their own personal finances and figure out what their expenses are first. Start there. Come to us with that information, and we'll help you figure out the rest.
Okay, and I can attest for that. Steve is our financial advisor, and he has done great for us. So thank you very much. And when we have those questions of, should we spend our money paying down this or paying that, he's always there, and he gives us the pros and cons and kind of walks us through that, because for some of us, just paying the debt down would be the best thing. And we think that that's going to be the best for our money. And it might not necessarily be. So again, I'm Marcus, this is Gene, and thank you for joining us on Learn, Live, Love. I'd like to invite you to check out compassamg.com today for more information on how you can succeed with finances in your marriage and resolving your financial issues in the marriage. Have a great day.